2013, Edward Snowden leaks his famous document leak of government documents. Oh, hold on. That sounds completely fucking stupid. It sounds so stupid. I almost want to keep it.
As I was listening to it, I was like, yeah, it sounds like something I would say.
2013, NSA employee Edward Snowden leaks a huge cache of documents to a specific reporter. Fuck it. You know what? All right, why don't we just start with it's, dude? I keep fucking it up.
All right, I can dig it. It's the Alien Conspiracy Podcast. We are your hosts, Agent ETA and
Agent Anderson. Come along as we examine UFO sightings, conspiracies, and all things strange. Follow the show on Twitter at AlienConPod. We also have an email address, alienconpod@protonmail.com. We would love to hear from you. All right, this week we are taking a look at, it's a little different format. Normally we'll do sort of a story or we'll present some stuff. This time we're looking at a slideshow. Yep, that's right, a slideshow. In 2013, NSA contractor Edward Snowden released a whole bunch of documents. I'm sure most people listening to this show are going to be familiar with that event. One of the things in this release was a slideshow presentation called The Art of Deception, Training for a New Generation of Online Covert Operations. And we don't have the audio presentation that went along with this slideshow. We know a little bit about it, about what's going on here, and the slides themselves tell a pretty interesting story. So Agent ETA and we're going to go through the slideshow and just talk about it. A little different format, mix things up a little bit, see how it goes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage anybody listening along with us, if you can find the link or find the slideshow, I think it would be very interesting and beneficial as well to follow along with us, if you can.
Yeah, definitely. We'll call out the slides that we're on. There's 50 slides total. Some of them are a little denser than others, so we'll spend more time on some than others. But
yeah,
all right, well,
I got to be honest, there's some of them that I look at and I understand, I think I understand some of the stuff that's going on there, but boy, is it confusing. Like when you really start getting in the weeds there, it gets pretty damn deep.
We got a couple boogeyman slides that you look at it and you kind of get scared a little bit. At least I do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so well,
start off with the first one.
Yeah, you want to start us off there, ETA?
Yeah, I'll start. All right. So the first one right here, it's a picture of a person. I'm assuming it's a man. Looks like a man holding up a note, and the note says, "I'm not trying to impress you, but I'm Batman." Or I'm Batman. And the guy is wearing a Batman T-shirt. It's that like the first Batman logo, the main Batman logo that anybody would think of. It's the yellow circle or circle. It's that typical yellow oval with the Batman symbol black in the inside. And it's a pretty telltale, statement, I think, a depiction to start off the slideshow because of what they're trying to present to us, I think. And there's a whole lot that they're trying to present to us. And like I said before, I only grasp a certain part of it, but I think this is a kind of an entertaining slide to me, to be honest, because you can make some jokes about this, but it's a good one to start off with. Because also, if you look at the bottom of the slide, it says The Art of Deception, Training for a New Generation of Online Covert Operations. And that is pretty much, that's what this whole slideshow is about, that and also, how the public interacts with such operations, how it I would say how it really kind of morphs and influences their subconscious. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things that are that what we're going to be talking about here. A lot of these organizations and stuff that are involved in what is going on here. I think that's one of the big things that they're trying to do is influence people's subconscious, their opinions, how they feel about certain things, how they react to certain things also. There's that one term that people always use when talking about conspiracies, right? Tinfoil hat. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think that that's by chance. I think that's by design. That's, to create plausible deniability. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to have covert operations online and to morph people's perceptions of certain events or opinions or whatever. I think that's it's an extremely powerful tool to have at your hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the thing I think that really bothers me the most about this whole slideshow is these are tools that they're not using these tools against terrorist cells or bad guys. They're using these tools against everybody. You,
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
everybody. We're being manipulated and we don't even know it.
yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
crazy thing. So my opinion on this first slide is there's a lot. Some of these slides have so much information packed into them that you could just talk about. Like, so this guy, like you talked a little bit about him. He's like looks like he's sitting in his bedroom or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But just to cherry pick a couple of things, like why would they choose Batman if he's online and he's basically being anonymous and he's saying I'm somebody? Why would they choose that particular hero? It's he's sort of a loner. He's a rich dude, so he's kind of like on top of the social circles. He has all these parties in the movies. It's sort of a really interesting choice that you could really pick apart the psychology of that, but we don't have a
character. That character in its own world, like you said, he has a lot of influence. He's very wealthy. He also is very deceptive, and
Yeah.
for whatever reason, however easy it may have been to figure out that Bruce Wayne was Batman, many people didn't. Even
Right.
though obviously many of the clues were there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's sort of like a hiding in plain sight kind of a thing. It's a really
Yeah.
interesting choice. But there's a couple other things on this first slide just to mention real quick. At the top of it, it says secret //si// rel to USA. I'm guessing released USA. I'm not sure. And FVEY. FVEY is short for Five Eyes, and that's the intelligence alliance between Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and the United States. Just to kind of go over a little bit of what's on here. And then at the bottom, you see a logo for GCHQ. Now, I don't remember which organization specifically, but I think a lot of these organizations, we didn't even know they existed before the document leak. But
Yeah.
the GCHQ logo kind of looks like there's a margarine, I think Imperial Margarine, like that little crown logo kind of looks like that. And it stands for the Government Communication Headquarters, and it's an intelligence and security organization that focuses on signals intelligence. Signals intelligence is basically intercepting stuff, whether it's like radio transmissions or email or whatever, just kind of intercepting intercepting communications is basically what they're all about. And it's an organization that's in the United Kingdom. So they did this slideshow and they're presenting it to the Five Eyes, essentially, is what the impression you get here. All right. So I guess that's what I wanted to say about the first slide. Anything else? Or should we move along?
Yeah, I think we should move along to the second one.
All right. Slide 2. This is another example of okay, so first of all, we have our little Covert logo. This is what I like to call this one. It's got all these little cubes kind of overlapping. And this one has HSOC, Human Science Operations Cell. And I had to look this up because, again, who knows what all this stuff is. This is a division of the Signal Intelligence Agency of the GCHQ. So this is a subdivision of GCHQ. And this is probably the organization that specifically did this slideshow, I'm guessing. Now, on this slide, it doesn't look like there's much to it, but there's certain patterns. And if you look closely, you can see that there's tiny words on the sides of some of these cubes. But the slideshow I have, unfortunately, the resolution isn't really good enough to make out what those words are in the logo. But I don't know. What do you think about this one?
I was trying to zoom in on them also because it's not like you say, it's not on all of them, but like at the top left of that cube cluster, the top left one has some, I'm not sure if it's a word or acronym. I think there's a dash in the middle of there somewhere, but I can't, the picture that I have isn't high res enough to be able to make out what it is. And I'm zooming in all the way, and it looks like in the bottom left there's some stuff too, but yeah, I can't make it out. I mean,
Bottom
I think
left,
it would be,
and then to the right,
to
there's another one too.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right
Yeah,
above
there
the
you go.
H. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think it would be definitely interesting to know what that is, like to get a good enough picture to find out what that says. Because I mean, most things when we're talking about the operations that we're talking about and the influencing humans, society and stuff, there's a lot of things that they'll put out in plain sight, but you're just not going to be able to recognize it because if you're not in the know, or if you don't have the right perspective to really recognize some of these things, you're just going to have no damn clue.
Yeah.
You're not paying attention in the right areas. You don't even know to pay attention.
Yeah. And a lot of these things, these are graphic designs. They're designed very specifically. They're not random. These colors, these shapes, everything was chosen for a specific reason. So it might not be cubes. It's also overlapping hexagons that sort of look like they form cubes, but it's hard to describe. I'm sure there's like a technical term for it, but all right, you want to move along to slide number 3?
Yeah, slide number 3. So when you go to slide number 3, the first thing that pops out to me is, there's a symbol on the left side that kind of looks like, I guess, like a 3-pronged ninja star of sorts with a circle in the middle, and it has a spider within that circle. It's black and blue. Under it has an acronym that's JTRIG. To the right of that, you have 3 boxes. The first box says online human. The second box says strategic influence, and the one below that says disruption and CNA. So I think what you want to talk about the human first.
Well, first all the JTRIG, it starts at the left.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's the Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group, and it's another subunit of the GCHQ. And I don't want to go too much into these guys, but you can look them up. There's a little bit of information about them you can find online, but it's sort of besides the point. And then, yeah, online human is the human intelligence, and then strategic influence. I guess I don't think that's like an actual department. I'm guessing that's like one of their goals. And
a strategy, I think.
Yeah,
and same thing with disruption and CNA as well.
Yeah, so that means CNA means something specific. It's designed to destroy, damage, or disrupt computers specifically. So that's like a hacking operation. Now, in this context, I don't know if they mean specifically to cause damage to actual systems, or if they mean it more along disruption and CNA more along the lines of like damaging organizations or social movements or that kind of a thing is kind of how I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's probably something that you could pivot towards whatever ends the means that you're trying to accomplish,
Yeah, but they're definitely up to no good. That's what this slide is telling me. And the symbolism of the ninja star, it definitely looks like a ninja star, like from a movie or something. I mean, again, that's a very specific symbol with a spider in it that we don't really have time to go too much into that, but just think about why they would use something like that. It's kind of interesting. All right, let's get on to slide number 4. This is when it starts to get kind of weird. So I guess I'll start with the description is that, okay, so slide 4, it's a bunch of figures. They look like, if you go to the restroom, like the man that's on the male restroom, it kind of looks like 3D versions of that kind of standing around. They're standing in little circles, and the circle they're standing around, which is just big enough for them to be in it, they're not big circles. Each of those circles is connected to one of the other circles with dotted lines, and each figure has a color, but there's like, looks like there's 2 blue ones, 2 pink ones, 2 tan ones, 1 green one or whatever. There's, which is interesting because some of them have 2 colors, some of them only have 1 color on the slide of the figures. And if you look at the way they're arranged, some of them connect to 2 of the other figures, some of them connect to 4 of the other figures. But if you go to the very top right, there's 1 blue figure, a dark blue figure, the only dark blue figure on there. He's only connected to 1 other figure that branches out from there. And that's kind of a really interesting kind of symbolism to me, because to me that suggests that's sort of the person who's influencing everybody else. And so the blue guy will influence the green guy, but the green guy doesn't know he's being influenced. But the green guy will change his opinion from this influence and go on to influence these other people. So it's kind of like a domino effect where the blue guy doesn't have to directly manipulate everybody on this board. He only has to manipulate 1 person, and then that follows, and you change that one key person, and then that changes everybody else on the board through extension.
Yeah, it's like a butterfly effect.
Yeah. So I'll stop with that. Do you want to talk about the words around the picture?
Yeah, on the first slide.
Yeah, on slide 4.
So, okay, so at the top, you start with anthropology, and then I'll go in a clockwise direction here. To the right of it, it's psychology, and that's right above that one blue figure that you're talking about that only has influence over one person or connection to one person. Mm-hmm. That one person has a connection to 3 people, which all those 3 people that they have connections to will definitely influence everybody else on the board, I would think, not either directly or indirectly. So under psychology, it has economics. Under that, biology. And down to the bottom, political science. Going on up to the left, history. And then sociology, and then back up around to the top to complete the full circle would be anthropology again. So all of these terms are when we're talking about a society and opinions of people or influences of individuals, every single one of these terms are immensely important. It depends on what your perspective is, because I think a lot of people's perspectives depends on what they do for a career or what their goals are in particular, what they want to achieve. But I mean, all of these are closely related, you know what I mean? And it's a very interesting set of symbolism we have here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think these are
the next slide.
These are the different disciplines they're using to manipulate people, I think. So they're using psychology and economics and all that stuff to figure out how to manipulate people. But yeah, the next slide is where it gets interesting. It's the same slide, but they add a few things. This slide is exactly the same as the other slide, but they've added words, smaller words, in between the major disciplines. And for example, between anthropology and psychology, we have deception, influence, and magic. I won't go through all of them. I'll just pick out the one area that I find the most interesting is between sociology and history. We have compliance, obedience, and social networks. And that's a little alarming to see that, if you just think about that. And then off to the right, there's between economics and biology, you have belief and religion. Now, why would they put that between economics and biology? That's very interesting, and I don't think it's by accident. Do you have any particular favorites, the extra words they've added here?
I do. I mean, there's a lot of, what you just said between sociology and history, the compliance, obedience, and social networks. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can pull from that, I think. A lot of, you could become really paranoid as well, I think, when you start delving into that kind of stuff. But
you should be. You should be paranoid after looking at this thing.
Yeah, and you absolutely should be. But so in between anthropology and psychology, you have deception, influence, and magic. I think that's pretty interesting to me because, through psychology, there's a lot of different rationalizations that can be made, and people that don't necessarily understand psychology, say for instance, and you're talking to somebody who's well versed in it, there's a lot of influence, deception, and magic that can be achieved. You know what I mean? And especially if you're, say, for example, trying to deceive people on a broad scale, presenting information, for example, that may not be truthful as the truth. And, as we've heard say, it's been said before, you tell a lie enough times and it becomes the truth. If enough people, have the opinion of a certain situation, then whether it be the right or wrong opinion, the truth or not, then that's going to be what's written down in the history books, right?
Yep. That happens all the time, I think.
But yeah, I mean, obviously there's probably 1,000 different ways you can use that to the, whatever your goal is. But I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on each slide. But yeah, this is one you could sit there and just kind of stare at and just imagine. You could daydream on this slide all day long,
To me, this slide is when it really starts to sink in we're boned.
Well, the depth of scale that they're working at, you know what I mean?
These guys are not dummies, these guys are, they're up to no good, and they definitely seem to have a really elaborate plan on how to achieve those no goodnesses.
Yeah. Well, and what they're doing also is very well researched. They know what they're doing, they've done enough studies to know how humans react to certain situations, and I don't think it's something that like is like, say for instance, if you're talking about like, you know, just these intelligence organizations, the Five Eyes. I'm positive that a lot of the information that they're working off of was already known before all these organizations were in existence. You know what I mean? And I'm sure there's plenty that they've learned since as well. You know, but they're following like a certain, you know, what would I call it? Patterns that the other intelligence organizations have followed before. You know what I mean? It's deception. They, you know, a lot of the things that I like to talk about is like the black flag type events. You know what I mean? Where, you know, a situation is created with you know, the solution already in reserve. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And every single time we see one of those type of events happen, it's always an intelligence agency that's, you know, closely involved with it, you know, and I think it's usually those agencies or groups that are the ones that cause it as well, you know.
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible.
But I'll stop my little rant there. I mean, we could, like I said, there's this slideshow is so crazy because like you can go off on so many rants, so many little rabbit holes off of each slide, you know.
Yeah.
It's
all right. Let's go on to the next slide. This is going to be slide number 6. Now, slide number 6 has big S4 to the upper left, and I don't think that they're talking about the S4 in, where is it, Nevada? In the middle of the slide, there's 4 blue squares, and in each square, you have a word. You have science, SIGINT, skills, and systems. This one, I think this is sort of like a placeholder slide. You could probably analyze, you know, how the design of it, the colors used and all that stuff, even the fonts if you wanted to. But this is not one of the more interesting ones. So why don't we go ahead and skip to the slide number 7, which is a repeat actually of a previous slide with a J-Trig logo. So let's skip to slide number 8. All right. You want to start us off on slide number 8? ETA?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So slide number 8 shows what I'm assuming is a magician. So he has a deck of cards and he's doing a long shuffle, I think, from one hand to another. I think that's what it's called, is a shuffle. I'm not an expert in this kind of stuff, but I do appreciate the work it takes to achieve some of those feats, some of the muscle memory involved with the card tricks and stuff. It's actually kind of impressive, you know.
Oh, yeah.
At any rate, it has a picture that shows this guy shuffling, doing a long shuffle of some sort, you know, a card trick. And then under it says, "We want to build cyber magicians."
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's pretty much all it says, all it shows on that slide. But I think that actually is quite telling. Cyber magicians, just that one term right there, cyber magician.
Right. Now, to be fair, in England, or the UK or whatever it's called, they do use some pretty funny words. Like they still have knights and ladies and kings and queens. The trunk of their car, they call it a boot. I don't know what they call actual boots. It's kind of weird. They call a flashlight they call it a torch. So it could just be
the front hood's a bonnet, I think, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. So
I actually kind of like that a little bit, to be honest. Like, I don't know why. Well, I think it's because of all the years of watching Top Gear, you know.
It could just be that because the language is a little different than it is in America, the word choice, you know. But the thing that sticks out to me is, like you're saying, they don't say we want to train cyber operatives. They say they want to build magicians. They're building magicians, not training operatives. And that's a really interesting choice of words, in my opinion.
And almost like, to me, it gives me the sentiment that like the people that they're talking about that are going to be these cyber magicians, that will be their only goal, like their only purpose. Like that will be what that is what you're going to do with your life, is be a cyber magician. And if you don't, well, we built you, so we can also terminate you. Yeah. You know, I think.
It could be, yeah. All right. So slide number 9 is another logo. This one's kind of fun. So it's got 4 trapezoids with a dot in the middle is the graphic, and then it has OCAA, Online Covert Action Accreditation. So this is like kind of like getting your license or getting like your nursing accreditation or something, you know.
Hell
I don't know. your
I
welding
can,
certificate.
I can apply for that freaking that CIA spot that I've been after all these years. I got my
Yeah.
accreditation. You know what I
So
mean?
there's not much to this slide, but it's just kind of fun because this is apparently they have an actual program to train people, is what this kind of indicates to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So let's skip to the next one. This is where it starts to get interesting again. You want to start us off with this one, ETA?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, okay, at this slide right here, at the top left, it says ANCO Key Skills Strand. So, to the right of that, it has 3 columns. And at the top of each column it has a term. Some of these all of these we've already heard. The first one, it says online human. Under that, it has 3 different boxes. Well, actually, I should say the heading below all 3 of these first headlines are magic techniques and experiment. Which I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Magic techniques and experiment. All right, then. Okay. So under online human, it says individual, group, and global. Under the next column, it says influence and info ops. Under that, it has psychology, deception, performance, and media. And that makes some sense to me because, influence and info ops, psychology, deception, that's going to be pretty closely related. And actually, they're right next to each other in that column, too. Most of these terms that I'm talking about that are in the bottom column, they're separated by a little bit of space. But psychology and deception are right next to each other. They're the only 2 that are.
Yeah.
So anyways, below that it has performance and media, like I said, and it's if your psychology is influenced by deception, your performance is going to be affected, I would suppose. Media, I'm not quite sure. Obviously, certain things in media. There's a lot of depictions in media, a lot of to use a popular term, fake news. But I would be more inclined to call it misinformation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of misinformation, I think, in media nowadays. That's for damn sure. Okay, so the third column is headlined by disruption and CNA. And so the terms under that in that column has professionalism, elegance, creativity, and intuition. So, I wasn't quite sure what to make out of elegance. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
What do you think about those 4 terms right there?
Well, so professionalism, speaks for itself. Elegance, they might be talking about not like an elegant lady in a gown, but elegance as far as you might say an elegant solution. So an elegant solution might be something you could achieve what you're trying to do, that with a much better solution, a simpler solution even than what somebody else might choose. So instead of let's say, instead of beating down an entire wall with a hammer, you might find that one pressure point that makes the whole wall fall, and then you could get the job done much quicker and much more efficiently and with more precision, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, so we're talking about disruption and CNA. So this is the part, remember, where they're actually trying to cause damage of some kind or other to whatever it is they're dealing with, whether it's a hacking group or a social movement. So to me, this suggests that the solutions need to be better than just going online and posting a YouTube comment saying somebody's shirt's ugly. It needs to be a little deeper than that. Although who knows, maybe that's, is an elegant solution. And then intuition is interesting because I don't know if you ever really want your operatives to use intuition. You want them to use skills. You know what I mean? So I don't know what to make of that. That's really interesting. I don't have really anything to add to what you said to the rest of this particular slide, except I've read through a pretty decent number of government documents, training manuals, whatever, for example, I was just looking at the Air Force letter, 200-5 that talks about how to report UFOs and whatever. And if you look, I've looked at training manuals and just all kinds of crazy stuff. Not once have I ever seen anything like magic techniques and experiment. You might see techniques or operating procedures, but not magic techniques. That's really kind of weird.
Everything is very matter of fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's there it's as dry as it gets. There are zero shenanigans, wordplay or whatever. It's all very straightforward because it has to be. You want these people to get the information, get the procedures as quickly as possible, whatever. So that kind of strikes me as a little bizarre. All right, so let's move on to slide number 11 now. And this is actually the exact same thing as slide number 10, but it has some additions here between the words. Sort of like the slide with the people standing. They add little words here and there between stuff, but in sort of in a different way. And there's lines connecting some of them. And
they added too much.
Yeah.
Agent Anderson, I just got to say, they added too much, and I don't like it.
Yeah,
because this really confuses me.
Yeah,
like when I first saw this slide, I was just like, oh wait, what?
Well, for example, what the fuck is a Hofstede dimension? I mean, I could Google that, I guess, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Clue.
Yeah, maybe I'll Google that in a bit. But there's some like really weird stuff. Like on the bottom, there's a square that says thin slicing, design, retention, and trust. And that box looks to me like it's connected to more other boxes than anything else here. Three other boxes maybe.
Whereas it's right in the middle of two columns too.
Yeah, which is kind of weird. And there's kind of like there's one interesting thing that catches my attention is at the very bottom under media, it says propaganda, branding, marketing, TAA, advertising, sell, own, earn. Like that's kind of that
makes sense.
You could interpret that in a couple different ways, but this is what they're using, right? These are their tools they're using for online operations. It's kind of crazy when you start looking at it. Look at this one. Constructing experience in mind of target, which should be accepted so they don't realize it. What?
Yeah.
What the heck? And then above that, it's optimizing deception channels, process of reflection to assess if we are doing doing OP. Okay. Process of reflection to assess if we are doing OP elegantly. And then diffusion of innovation. This is just crazy stuff, man. Like it's hard to know what they're talking about specifically. But look, there's conformity and obedience on there again. There's 10 principles of scam. There's hindsight bias. There's decisions, parentheses, emotional, not rational. This slide is where it starts to get kind of off the rails for me. Like this is crazy, crazy stuff.
And then the next slide, which is basically the same thing, it gets a little bit more off the rails. I mean, they add more to it with these clouds and stuff, these blue clouds.
Do any of these clouds stick out to you? Because there's a couple that are kind of screaming at me.
Right next to professionalism, it has insiders, destructive, organizational psychology.
Yeah, that's one.
Let me just say that again. Destructive organizational psychology.
Yeah,
they're trying to fuck up your mind, bro.
Oh, I get a little scared looking at this stuff, man. This is scary stuff. They're not just talking about this under the CNA disruption in CNA column, by the way. Now it's actually they spelled it out, CompNet attack. Another one that kind of jumps out at me is legitimization of violence. All right, so what is that even doing on this slide? Like, does that bother anybody else that our government agents are being trained on how to legitimize violence? What does that even mean?
Influencing people's subconscious and their opinions. Look what's going on in this country right now. I mean, I'm not going to state like any particular opinion on anything really, but you look at the type of violence that's going on right now, unchecked as well in certain areas, just because there's too much chaos. You know what I mean? The amount of chaos that has been created just in the last year, a year and a half. It's been ramping up, you know what I mean? It's been leading up. I'm not sure what it's leading up to, but typically, my opinion is like when you have this much division in society, when you have this much distraction, this much just malarkey and shenanigans going on, and media all over the damn place is telling you two different things, no matter where you look. You know what I mean? I don't know what the hell to believe. You know what I mean? And then when I go out into regular public, it doesn't seem like the case. Like what I see on media, what I see on social media, everywhere you look, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on any mainstream media outlet or what have you, what I see on the TV or on the internet is not what I see in real life. You know what I mean? So there's definitely some deception going on right now, and we are purposefully and intentionally being divided. Like I said, I don't know what ends to what means. You know what I mean? What's the end result? But I would imagine the end result is to gain more control. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is ultimately what's happening. You know what I mean?
I think that it works better for the people in power if we're divided, because then we're more worried about these small issues that don't matter that much that we get really angry about, and we don't pay attention to what's going on behind the curtain. I think is what it's all about.
Yeah, they're able to accomplish more because we're well distracted, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so I just looked up Hofstede dimensions out of curiosity, by the way, and this is from Wikipedia. Hofstede's cultural dimensions theory is a framework for cross-cultural communication developed by Geert Hofstede. It shows the effects of a society's culture on the values of its members and how these values relate to behavior using a structure derived from factor analysis. So sounds right up the alley of this slideshow. They're basically using this to manipulate the ever-living crap out of people, I guess.
Yeah.
Yay science. All right. Let's move along to the next slide. So now we're going to be on slide number 13. This one's kind of fun. It looks a little bit like a board game. So at the top, we have Human Science Learning Path is the sort of the title of the slide. And in the middle, we have a bunch of hexagons connected to each other. Each hexagon has words in it. So these are different things, right? So different disciplines, perhaps. So we start from the left. We have three green hexagons that are labeled core. History, in parentheses, e-learning. The middle one is human aspects of cyber operations, 3 days, and culture, 1 day. So I'm guessing these are different courses that they're taking, which is kind of interesting to know what the titles of the courses are, I suppose. So culture is connected to purple and I guess light yellow or tan hexagons. The purple ones are scams and deception, 2 weeks, strategic influence, 1 day, and the tan ones are psychology and cyber psychology, 1 day, and digital tells, half a day. And underneath that, we have kind of like orangish looking one, and we have disruption, 1 hour, and social engineering for CNA, e-learning. And the labels for the purple ones are influence, for the tan ones, online human, and for the bottom ones, CNA and disruption. So this ties into the categories we were talking about before. What do you make of this one, ETA?
Yeah, it seems like this is an outline for a course study. You know, on the left is where you start out. You got to start out with a little bit of history, a little bit of e-learning, you know, to set your platform. You know what I mean? And then you move on from there to more and more complicated issues. You know what I mean? It actually kind of makes sense that you would start out where you start out in this little depiction here. You know. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, I mean, the reason why obviously I'm saying this seems like a course study is because of the days involved in parentheses that they have there. Yeah. You know, obviously it sounds like they're describing how long it takes to learn these particular issues, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, I actually kind of, to me, it actually kind of seems weird. Like our culture, I would think there would be so many damn things that you could learn about culture. Man, 1 day would not be able to cover it.
Yeah.
You know? But then you look at scams and deception, and it's 2 weeks.
Right.
Like that's the longest course right there as far as it looks out of all of them by far. You know, so they're definitely, you know, focused in on one particular, you know, skill set right there. Yeah. I think. I mean, everything else.
There's people that spend their entire lives studying culture, but they only need 1 day because they just need those bits of culture that you use to manipulate people. So you don't need all of that. Mm-hmm. You just need just the little pieces that are helpful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yeah, man, it's then disruption's only 1 hour.
Yeah, right.
I guess it doesn't. I guess that's not very like involved. I guess it doesn't take much to disrupt, I suppose.
But apparently not.
That actually kind of makes sense though. If the platform for disruption has already been set up, you know what I mean? Then I guess it wouldn't take much then, I suppose, you know. But the
Yeah.
scams and deception, though, like I said, not to keep on going back to that, but that is the one that really stands out to me because how much time they spend on it. Obviously, they're very, very well involved in that. They
Yeah.
if they have that much time to spend on it, then there's a lot of information to cover.
The next closest time wise is the human aspects of cyber operations, which is 3 days. That's the closest thing we got. 2 weeks is by far the longest course. And like you're saying, it's kind of interesting that that's the longest course on here is scams and deception.
All right, so the next slide is a picture, and it's from World War II. It's a picture of 4 soldiers holding up an inflatable tank. So it looks like pretty convincing in this black and white photo of it being a real tank, and I'm familiar with the operation that is depicted here is in World War II, and that what they wanted to do is depict a buildup of troops on a certain section to basically like fool the Germans into thinking that they were going to attack north, I think, on the European mainland, when they ended up attacking a little bit more east, you know what I mean? So it's one of those things. It's a simple little depiction of deception. It's not a real tank. It's an inflatable tank. There's no harm that's going to come from this inflatable tank, but it did work well to deceive in World War II. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess this is a real world example of what they're talking about, but they're applying this to the cyber world online. But it seems harmless at first, but when you realize that, they're probably causing the enemy a whole lot of trouble just with the simple inflatable, it's genius. This is what I'm talking about, like an elegant solution. It's simple and it works, It's not overly complicated. It's low cost, and it basically, for the enemies to overcome this, would cost them way more in time and effort and resources than it would for them to do this.
Well, and there's also probably a couple leaps of faith that they would have to make as well too. Like they would have to trust certain sources of information, wholly and fully to make sure that this is either a real thing or a fake thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at this picture, that inflatable tank. I mean, if you're observing like a field of those tanks from an aerial perspective, you're not going to be able to tell from that distance whether that's a real tank or not. But I tell you what, though, it's definitely going to look like one. So like, it's you're not going to want to take that chance. Like in war, I would imagine there's certain chances that you just can't take. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. So yeah, I think that is actually, like you said, it's kind of a genius manipulation right there.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to slide number 15. This one's kind of simple. It's just a magician throwing cards at the camera. So is this guy, a bald magician, and cards flying at you. Now, I don't really see a whole lot here. Maybe you could interpret that like there's looks like a 4 of diamonds is the most prominent card, but I don't think there's a whole lot on this slide. It's more of a filler slide to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could say that like, all right, so in this very picture, one of his eyes is blocked. So is that potentially referencing like, the Eye of Horus?
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I mean, all right. So there's, man, we can get off on quite a tangent when it comes to this, but
let's do it.
Well, all right. So one of the things that interests me about this particular depiction is not just in pop culture. There's a lot of pictures that you can see of famous performers where they're purposefully blocking off one eye and giving you one eye. Sometimes even these eyes are dressed just like the Eye of Horus. But I think one of the more interesting depictions of the Eye of Horus throughout history is in buildings. Like all right, so if you go there's a lot of depictions of representations of the Eye of Horus and of also like of Egyptian architecture, like in Washington D.C. I think Washington D.C. is probably one of the best examples, to be quite honest. Well, for instance, the Washington Monument. Okay, so the Washington Monument is obelisk, right?
Yeah.
Well, the obelisk, you could say, I mean, it represents more than this, but it seems like this is what they're depicting because of what's laid out on the ground around the Washington Monument. So, the Washington Monument is a phallus. Basically, it's depicting a male phallus, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're following Egyptian mythology or religion, whatever you want to call it. Within that obelisk, if you were looking at the Washington Monument from like the ground, like a bird's eye view, the Washington Monument is set within a double Vesica Pisces, which a double Vesica Pisces represents the female womb, from what I understand. So if you have a phallus, coming out of a female womb, like to me, it kind of represents phallic worship.
Like, what does it signify? Like the Eye of Horus, what does that mean? What does that tell us if they're doing that? Is like we're
the one eye,
Yeah.
at the eye at the top of the pyramid.
All right.
Basically is like some people say it represents the Illuminati. I actually think that that's not the real interpretation of it. What it really interprets is like, the controlling power at the top. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because I actually think that the Illuminati, that term that you hear all sorts of people fucking talk about the Illuminati and shit, and I don't think that they're a real organization. I do think that there are people with control at the power at the top that steer civilizations this way or that, depending on what they want to accomplish. But I don't think that there is like the quote unquote Illuminati. I think the more real organization would be the Freemasons. If you want to talk about people that have been at the forefront of every big major event in civilization, at least at the very least in Western civilization, I mean, the Freemasons are the ones you want to talk about. I mean,
Yeah.
Otherwise, what the fuck are we talking about, dude? Like,
Yeah, and I looked into it briefly, and from what I could tell, the Illuminati, it was some kind of political movement in Europe that was very brief, and they were stamped out very quickly, and probably they haven't existed for a long time. But then again, if it was a super secret society, that's what they'd want you to think. But I haven't been able to find any real evidence that they actually exist. Whereas the stonecutters, they definitely exist.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it's more likely. It's much more likely because of the history that we can go into and learn. It's much more likely that the people at the top that are holding the strings, controlling society, however you want to put it, the people at the top that have the control. It's much more likely that the Rothschilds and all the people that are involved in controlling the world banks, because I mean, you look at that old saying, and I've said it before: follow the money, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's very true. It's extremely true, especially if you want to be, very analytical about what what we're talking about. Who are the people that have control? In most countries,
the people with the money.
ultimately, it's the people that control the issuance of money. Just like in the United States, we have the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve controls the issuance of money to our government. Our government has to borrow money at interest. Our government does not have the ability to print its own money, which to me is so absolutely damn ridiculous. It's just freaking ridiculous. We could go off on another tangent, but at any rate, these are the people that are pulling the strings here. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of secrecy involved for sure, and there's definitely like secret societies and stuff, but at the end of the day, it's all the same people, man. Like I said, not to speak too much in broad generalities, but it's all the world banks, man. It's all the world bankers, the people that have the most control. Those are the people that have the most control.
Yeah. It's such a perfect scam too, just banks in general. Imagine if you start a business, but you get all your products, you don't actually have to pay for or produce any of them. You just get them from other people, just give you those products, and you get to sell them. It's free money. It's a craziest scam ever.
It's the best scam ever if you're the one controlling it.
Right.
Like, all right, so you've heard that saying, if you want to be a good investor, you got to invest with other people's money, not your own.
Yep.
Like that's the peak of that right there. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're not investing any of their own wealth.
All right, you want to do? We're closing in on an hour here. Let's do one more slide, and then that'll be it for today. probably this will be a 2 or 3 parter because there's quite a lot to go
Yeah.
over in this episode. So we'll
Yeah.
talk about one more slide and then we'll call it quits. So the next slide number 16, it's got the title of it is Magicians, the Military, and Intelligence. And it's got pictures of 3 guys. We have Jean-Robert Houdin, Jasper Maskelyne, and John Mulholland. And probably the dapperest of them is the guy in the middle, Jasper Maskelyne.
Jasper dapper as fuck, dude. Look at that fella.
Yeah, he sure is.
Just look, hey man. Hey, he's in his time and era. He getting whatever woman he want, man. He has that nice mustache. He's one of those cool characters smoking a cigarette. You know, he got that Dapper Dan up in the hair and shit, up on his dome piece.
He's a Dapper Dan man.
I will say that, like, I do think that John Mulholland has a better name.
Oh, for sure.
But like John Robert Houdin is probably the most respectful out of the 3. I would think.
But I don't know if he doesn't look. I mean, look at the picture. What's he doing with his hand there? That does not look like a respectable pose to me.
What are you doing, sir? And why is your hand not in your vest?
Can't you go do that in private, buddy?
Hey, look. Well, why do you think he's looking off to the side? You know what I mean? He's looking up and off to the side to distract you from what he's doing with his hand.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, they're all magicians. All 3 of these guys are magicians. And I actually kind of, I really kind of find what Jean Robert Houdin did for Napoleon III really quite interesting. I don't know. It's one of those interesting kind of stories within history where I guess you could say he used his intelligence to overcome a situation, you know?
Or could you say perhaps he had an elegant solution to a problem?
Yes.
All
yes,
right.
You absolutely freaking can. And that's probably the best way to describe it. Yeah, absolutely. So Napoleon III sent Jean-Robert Houdin into Algeria to basically help suppress an uprising from the locals there, you know. And so the locals there were very into their own magic, I guess you could say, like, you know, their shamans, their religion. There's a lot of culturally, there was a lot of influence as far as like people depicting magic and how strong their magic was, you know. And so Napoleon III sent Jean-Robert Houdin down there, I think in a bit of a stroke of brilliance, really, rather than just going down there in force and just like forcing people to, you know, to give up, you know, to be subservient, you know. He sent Jean-Robert Houdin down there and you know, with the explicit intent to prove that French magic was stronger, you know. So that's exactly what he did. He proved that French magic was stronger, and he impressed the holy hell out of the people down there, from what I understand. At the end, he actually did describe, though, like, no, this is actually a high level of skill and deception. It's not magic. But still, he was able to accomplish the goal, you know, and I think that's pretty damn impressive, you know. Very interesting, the way he was able to do it.
Yeah, it's such a novel solution to the problem of an uprising. I've never heard that story before. I'll talk a little bit about John Mulholland. I looked into that guy a little bit. He was born in 1898 and he died in 1970. And he was a magician, as you might have guessed, since we already said that. He was also an author and a publisher and an intelligence agent. Yeah, he worked for the CIA. Kind of a weird combination there. He started learning magic when he was a teenager, and he kind of worked as a magician for most of his life. And for 2 decades, he was a professional magician, I guess, not most of his life. So he published some books and magazines on how to do magic, and he was also a close friend of Harry Houdini. In 1953, he left his position as the editor of the Sphinx, supposedly because he had health problems, but in reality, he left that position to go work for the CIA. As an employee of the CIA, he wrote a manual about deception and misdirection called the CIA Manual of Trickery and Deception. This was not available for a while, but you can actually Google it and find it online. You could get a PDF or you could buy a print version, I think on Amazon or whatever. It's probably an interesting read. I didn't really have time to read it for this. It's a little off the beaten path. But it's basically just how to deceive people, essentially, and that's what magicians do, I suppose. He didn't just write that manual. He did a lot of stuff in the CIA. Like, he was did something for Project MK Ultra, which, hello, we got to do an episode about that. That's crazy. I'm sure we'll get to it eventually. He worked in counterintelligence and on some of the ESP projects, and the Red Scare. Apparently, for example, on the ESP, they would ask him, like, how are these people doing this? Because it's basically a trick, and he would help them figure out how they were using tricks to simulate ESP, because obviously ESP doesn't really exist.
Mm-hmm.
At least, well, in my opinion, I respect the opinion of others who believe it does. I just want to throw that out there.
I haven't seen a convincing case. And
he's probably, a lot of his work laid the foundation for techniques that are still in use to this day. So he was probably, we don't have all the documents for what he did. We don't know exactly what he did for everything, but he did contribute greatly to this, the CIA and the general spy techniques, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. And then the one in the middle, Jasper, he was another magician. I didn't look into him that much. Did you look into him at all?
I did a little bit, yeah. I'm familiar with the guy. Like I was talking about before in one of our previous slides, the inflatable tank.
Yeah.
That was an inflatable Sherman tank, and Jasper. How do you pronounce his last name? That's the one thing I didn't get quite right. Masculine.
I don't know. Masculine. Mescaline.
Mescaline. I'm gonna call him mescaline.
All right.
No, masculine. I'll just call him masculine. But no, he worked with the Royal Engineers in World War II, and he was skilled at camouflage. So he would help them camouflage like their actual tanks and planes and stuff that they had, pillboxes and stuff like that, set up.
Okay.
And then he would also help them with like inflatable Sherman tanks, developing some of that kind of stuff and coming up with the ideas of misdirection. You know what I mean? And so when you did have like German spy planes flying ahead, taking pictures and stuff, trying to, get a count of what you have building up on what particular area, what have you, then he would be redirecting them with those inflatable tanks and inflatable airplanes. I think they had as well, but also with camouflage. So he was very, very well versed in the art of deception. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, he fits right in there with both these other characters and the whole idea of this slideshow.
All right. Well, that's a pretty interesting slide that they're referencing these specific people, but I think it ties into what they're trying to do in general. Is they're trying to manipulate people and not let the people know that they're being manipulated, is how I'm sort of interpreting this so far. Man, mm-hmm. I would love to hear the audio portion of this slideshow. I really would. I
know, right? Yeah, I think there are some slides in particular. Well, all the slides, but like in particular, there are definitely some slides that, like, if we had the audio, that would bring so much perspective.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna call it quits for now. We'll do a part 2 and maybe a part 3, depending on how long it takes us to get through it, because this is about an hour and we're only on slide 16 here. There's just so much here to talk about that I don't want to skip over too much stuff either, because there's so much interesting stuff. Mm-hmm. But I guess we'll close it out. So thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter at AlienConPod. We also have an email address, alienconpod@protonmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Join us next time for part 2 of this wacky slideshow.